other things for you. Well, maybe I'll save this for later. So, what you see here are millions of people who have to work for a living, not either they're not able to find jobs, especially the young people. Now, just when you're at that age, it's like you want to say, thanks, Mom and Dad, thanks for everything. Mom and Dad are expecting you. You're an adult now. You can go on, and it's like, I can't move out. You want to get out. You're ready to start your own life. And, you might want to start a family. You may have already gone to college. And here you are, perhaps with a college degree. But whether or not you have the college degree, whether or not you've even completed high school, you certainly need work. And you're not finding it. You're not finding work, and prices are going up, and if you're not finding work, you're probably living with your parents. Somebody's supporting you. And they're struggling because their wages, even if they have jobs, their wages aren't going up and prices are going up. I might add that the conditions under which people are living in North African and Middle Eastern countries are not unknown in other parts of the world. You can find them in Latin America, you can find them in North America and Central America. You can find them in the Pacific Island nations, you can find them in Southeast Asia, West Asia, and Central Asia. You can find them beginning to creep in through the periphery of Europe to the industrialized countries that typically enjoy great social welfare benefits and low unemployment rates. So this is something that's happening around the world. Why exactly North Africa, Tunisia, Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, Bahrain, Syria, Jordan become flashpoints is not a question I can answer. As I said, maybe perhaps Professor Mark Levine can answer. If I had a board behind me, don't answer. Okay. But if I had a board behind me, my students would tell you what I would do next. I would say, look, irrespective of the country, the social order, or more precisely the class structure, looks something like this. You have a class of people who own the factories and the big retail establishments. And owning factories is called means of production. Factories are called means of production. Those are the places where you produce things. These are where the tools and technologies are. And this class has a name in modern economic theory. It's called a capitalist. The rest of the population, most of the rest of the population, are those who don't own the land, the tools, and technologies. They have no means of subsistence. They can't go out and farm on their own because 2% own 44% of the land. They can't go out and produce on their own because somebody else owns the factory. Therefore, they have to sell their ability to work to the owners of capital, the owners of the means of production. And that's precisely what goes on. The workers need the capitalists, the bosses, because they have the jobs. The bosses need the workers because without them, nothing gets produced. But although the two need each other and therefore have a necessary relationship, the relationship is antagonistic. It's antagonistic because the workers want to be paid more, and they really don't want to produce 10 tables a day. It's like, that's too much. How about 5 tables a day? They don't want production to be ramped up so that at the end of the day they're just exhausted. And they would like a wage they can live on. The bosses, on the other hand, the capitalists, have an opposite interest. They want as much production as possible out of their workers, but for the least amount of wage possible. The less you pay your workers is the more profit you get. Ask anybody in business. If you want more profit, how do you get it? And one way is to drive down wages. So there's this struggle between the two classes. The workers trying to get higher wages, they're trying to get jobs, and they're trying to get higher wages. And their bosses limiting the number of jobs and driving down the wages. By the way, you see it here at UCI, where many of your teachers are temporary lecturers. If we weren't temporary, you wouldn't be asking us questions like, will you be here next year? Anyway, one of the ways to get wages down is not to offer full employment. You have, say, 100 workers, they all need work. Offer work to 80 of them, or 85, maybe 90. But leave a certain percentage unemployed. Everybody knows, even if they don't take an economics class, that not everybody is going to get a job. And that puts you in individual competition with one another. Now you will underbid one another, because your desperation is greater than that of the fellow next to you. So one way the owners of the means of economic production drive down wages is to maintain some unemployment. The level of unemployment varies with particular conditions, but unemployment is the whip upon the working class. It instills a certain discipline. One way the workers can deal with this is to organize. And one thing that is left out in almost all accounts of the uprisings is the role of trade unions, particularly in Egypt. I was telling some of the students here that about 3 weeks ago I had lunch with a Stanford history professor, Joel Bainan, who had spent a few years recently in Egypt. His specialty is the Egyptian working class, particularly the labor movement. And if you want to know something about the Egyptian workers and their labor organizations for the last 100 years, this is the guy to talk to. And he said, it's very interesting to pick up the American media and read it about Egypt. They talk about the young people and how they were using Facebook and Twitter. And he says all of that is true. Young people were involved, and they did use Facebook, and so on and so forth. But he said one of the things that gets overlooked is in the last few years, the Egyptian workers in their labor unions have pulled off a number of very powerful strikes against the former Mubarak regime. And that these economic issues in Egypt, and as I pointed out by going through The Guardian and other countries, are one of the pillars of the struggle. The other one is for political freedoms. The political freedoms aren't there precisely to have the economic exploitation. It's not that, Arab leaders just say, leaders is, I should just say Arab rulers. Who says they're leaders? Rulers avoid democracy as much as possible to maintain the economic exploitation. It's not a cultural thing. You hear people say that. You hear people bash Arabs or Muslims going, well, they're just not into democracy. Rulers anywhere are not into democracy. Try it here. And before you laugh or before you get indignant, what do you mean, try it here? What I say to my students is, look, you want to see how democracy works? Go to your place of work. Stand up on a chair I'm not going to go that far. But okay, stand up on a chair and say, fellow workers, let's organize a labor union for our collective rights, so that we can negotiate with one voice with the boss. You'll probably, what's the result? The result will not be your boss saying, oh, exercising freedom of speech, are you? Bill of Rights and all that. The result will probably be you're fired. Probably. There will be some kind of punishment. Outside of the workplace, you're pretty much free to say a lot of things. But you could probably say that, and Gaddafi probably says that in Libya. Anybody wants to go home and talk down my name, they can do it. Well, yeah, in the privacy of your own home, you can say anything. It's when you try to say it in public, when you try to say it in the arena of economic exploitation, that's where it gets curtailed. And the whole apparatus of the police, whether they're the open police or the secret police, the whole apparatus of the police is to ensure that the economic exploitation does not get out of hand. Or excuse me, that the struggle against the economic exploitation does not get out of hand. I might add that if you look around the world, you will see these kinds of, you will see resistance popping up on all continents. In the Guardian Weekly back in December, and I don't think I brought it with me, but in the Guardian back in December there was an article about Bangladesh, okay, West Asia. And the government sent the military out to confront workers, and as far as I recall from the article, mainly women in the garment industry who had staged some kind of massive strike and demonstration against their exploitation. So these issues exist around the world. Why exactly we find this kind of uprising in North Africa, the Persian Gulf states, Bahrain, and the Middle East, at precisely this point, I don't know. One of the great mysteries of history is why certain things turn out to be a flashpoint. I don't know the answer. I know I've seen it in my own life. I can just, not to go off too much on a tangent, but I can recall as I was in my last term as a college senior, my undergraduate years, the anti-war movement against Vietnam had quieted down pretty much because Nixon was taking troops out and Vietnamizing the war. And so the anti-war movement had lost a little punch because it looked like the war was winding down. And then Nixon got on television on April 30th, 1970 and says, I got to tell you all, I just sent U.S. troops into Cambodia. He just widened the war. And so that led to a surge in protests. And then 4 days later, an anti-war protest on the campus of Kent State University in Ohio, National Guardsmen shot dead 4 students. And that was a catalyst to shut down higher education in America. Hundreds of colleges went on strike. At least 500 went on strike. 51 did not reopen for the rest of the term. College president said to the professors, give them whatever grades they have as of May 5th, when the strikes all began. Because we just can't reopen the campus. It's just too volatile. And why did the killings of these are not the first 4 people killed in the in that year. I mean, why did the killing of 4 students at Kent State matter nationally? I don't know, but I can tell you, to use that cliche, all hell broke loose. And it was a very different world. So why this is happening now, I don't know.